Editor's Take. I'm Sakshi Batra and I have with me Gaurav Choudhury. He's the Deputy Executive Editor of Moneycontrol, and we are going to be discussing the likely announcement of a selection of the Lokpal, the country's first ever Lokpal in the country. Thanks very much, Gaurav, for joining in. Now, we know that the non-appointment of Lokpal has been a contentious issue for a long time now, but we are seeing some progress on this front. So what's the news really?
So what we hear is that Justice Ghose is going to be appointed the Lokpal of the country. And this comes probably 6 years after the Lokpal Act was enacted in 2013. Okay. And there has been a lot of moving here and there so far as the Lokpal appointment of Lokpal is concerned.
Yeah.
The appointment of Lokpal, as we know, there is a 5-member committee that appoints the Lokpal, headed by the Prime Minister and with the leader of the opposition, the Chief Justice of India, and an eminent jurist being members of the panel. But for some reason it has got delayed for months on end, in fact for years on end. And now with the Lokpal, what we hear, if it is correct, and if Justice Ghose is going to be appointed as the Lokpal of the country, probably it'll bring to an end a very long process from the enactment of the Lokpal Act before the enactment. There was a very long process of discussion and dialogue that happened with people involved in this matter, both within and outside the government. And now we will see the Lokpal being appointed. But this is something that was long overdue. Absolutely.
So long overdue. By when do we expect a formal announcement on this front?
So what we hear is that in a day, probably today, we will have an announcement that the government will make. Interesting because it comes when the Model Code of Conduct is in place, although this doesn't, prima facie, doesn't seem to violate the Model Code of Conduct, because it has got nothing to do with a decision that is likely to could influence voting patterns. But having said that, this could have been probably done when the government, when the elections were not notified, and during the first, it's been 5 years since this government has been placed, and for whatever reasons, whether the leader, for the absence of the leader of the opposition in the panel's meetings, and various other reasons, this was not. But as I said, this is long overdue. We're just waiting for the announcement to be made.
Absolutely. So tell us more about the selection process. We do know, and you also just pointed out, that the absence of an opposition voice has been the major factor why opposition is also crying foul. So what are the other reasons why it was delayed?
So that is the primary reason. And it's selected by a 5-member panel, headed by the Prime Minister, with the leader of the opposition, the Chief Justice of India, and also an eminent jurist appointed by the President, who is a member of the panel. The leader of the opposition has been, have not been really happy with the turn of events, in the way they say they have been treated in this selection process. There was also a technicality. The Congress leader Mallikarjun Kharge, for a long time, could not have been designated as the leader of the opposition because of the low number of seats that the Congress had in the Lok Sabha. But be that as it may, if a way could be found for appointment of the CBI chief, which follows a similar, not identical procedure, a way could have been found for this also.
Right. So what will happen next, and how will the Lokpal really function after the announcement of the formal announcement of the Lokpal and the 8 members?
Correct. So once the Lokpal is appointed and then the 8 members are inducted, which is again will follow this, then the Lokpal is instituted. And once the Lokpal is instituted and it becomes a functioning body, it can actually investigate cases brought into its notice under the Prevention of Corruption Act. It will have 30 days to complete a preliminary inquiry, extendable by 3 months, and 1 year to complete a full inquiry, extendable by 1 year, another year. It has to complete the investigation. Everything has to be decided within 2 years. And please remember that Lokpal doesn't need the government's approval or the permission to carry out investigations.
Okay. So what are experts really saying about this announcement once it comes through, and after a prolonged delay? What are their opinions right now?
So there are various sides on both sides of the various views on both sides of the fence, and why it took a long time coming. And there is a very strong view that the Indian Lokpal, the way the law has been enacted and it's being instituted now, is actually doesn't have the teeth that it deserves. But be that as it may, I think we need to have an imperfect beginning is always better than no beginning at all. And please remember that the attempts at forming a Lokpal and passing the act, actually it took 8 attempts, starting from the late 1960s until 2011. When the Lokpal bill was introduced and eventually passed in 2013. So it's been a 5-decade long coming, and while it might still be imperfect, probably the design flaws will get ironed out as we get along.
Right. Thanks a lot then, Gaurav, for sharing all that insight. Well, finally, India will have the first Lokpal, or the anti-corruption ombudsman. We are just waiting for the formal announcement by the government on this front. Thanks very much for joining us in this edition of Editor's Take, and do stay logged on to moneycontrol.com for more news and updates. Thanks for watching.